up, Shark Nation? Welcome to another episode of the SharkPod live from Greystone Studios, aka my box room here in Greystones. I've got Mark Baker out there. Marky B, how are you getting on?
Good. All good in Glenageary. I'm again in a box room, but I think a lot of people are in their box rooms these days, working from home.
Yeah, loving the box room. We were thinking about building one of those cabins in the back this week, and we were measuring it out and stuff, and it's got out of control completely.
2 stories.
Yeah, my wife said we need to really rein that in. I'd like take what we're thinking, but just half it, But we've got a guest here today is Kevin O'Loughlin of Nostra, IT Outsourcing. How are you getting on, Kevin?
Great. Yeah. Nice to meet you, Luke, as well. I'm working from home like everyone else, and I actually did build the box out in the back garden, but I turned it into a pub rather than an office in the end.
So Kevin's got the shebeen out there, and where are you based? Are you still in Dublin, or I know you guys are based out of Lucan originally?
I'm still in Dublin. Yeah, living in South Dublin.
Perfect. So how would you introduce Nostra to people who haven't come across the business before? How would you, when people say to you kind of what you guys do, what's your answer?
The answer really is that we provide IT departments to companies and all the IT that the IT departments need. We're traditional IT outsourcing in some respects, but probably the core message that we give to people is that we step in where ultimately the relationship between the business owners or the financial controllers or the CFO of a business and their IT department breaks down. When that relationship breaks down, it can be a very difficult place for a company and an IT department. And we step in and ultimately help figure out what the company needs in terms of technology. We deploy it and then we support it all.
And so you guys have been in business for a long time, though. When did you guys when did the business start?
So we started 2nd of January 2007.
Okay.
And being very specific there, but 2nd of January 2007. So we just wanted to get the very tail end of the Celtic Tiger, which we did before we fell off a cliff.
Want to get in there just at the end, make sure that you get locked into nice leases and all that good stuff before everything kind of
maximum salaries, maximum rent was our objective. Yeah.
Okay, so objective 1 achieved. Mark Baker, IT outsourcing. You're an entrepreneur. Is that something that you guys came across when you were launching your business? Something you had to think about?
It's something that was recommended to me as an absolute must, but it's not something. So we did a business plan. We were going to kind of bootstrap it, just me and my business partner, and then we took on investment and stuff. So our first business plan was completely different from our second business plan, which was a more mature one with kind of proper input rather than just 2 people with just big ambitions and dying to get started. So we didn't have IT outsourcing or any kind of IT in mind. It's just something that was almost oblivious to us because we just thought, we're a 2-man band. We became 4 people quite quickly though. So I'm very, very glad that we did. We do have an IT outsource provider who I talked to just over the last year almost daily, and it's a lifesaver, an absolute lifesaver.
And so Kevin, like when you were getting into this, sometimes I wonder, so were you like a technical guy that was working for a big American tech firm and you said, I want to do this myself? Or because what me and Mark have often said about Ireland is that there's so many people working for these big tech companies that you think there'd be spin-offs all over the place. And I know that there's a lot of startups out there, there's a lot of people going out on their own, but it does take a big jump, especially when there's so many IT jobs in those big companies. What was your background before you got into Nostra?
Before I get into it, I was a techie, and I was an IT engineer. Then I probably realized I enjoyed talking about IT more than I liked fixing it, and I ended up in a sales role and did that for a few years. But we didn't start as an IT outsourcing company. We actually started back in 2008 as a cloud and a virtualization company, which was about making IT footprint smaller and kind of giving people a more fit for purpose solution. And we became an IT outsourcing company because ultimately we were meeting IT managers. And what I learned very quickly is that unless you're out in the market and you're looking at loads of different companies and how they're doing it, you get a very siloed view of what things can be. And we had the experience because I saw tons of companies and what they were doing, and I could see who was very innovative, who wasn't. But if you're an IT manager in a company, it's very hard for you to stay on trend or stay current with what's out there. So we ended up having to bypass the IT departments to get in and actually explain our solutions to the business owner, because they didn't care what the technology was. They just wanted the best, and whether it cost less or more than what they had, they just wanted the best. They wanted to be able to focus on their core business. And we got an early win of a customer, I'm going to say in about 2010, and it was a very significant Irish startup. And they were, backed by almost €1 billion of investment at that time, and they outsourced everything, and except what their core business was. And they said, we don't want to be the best accountant in the world. We get the best accountant in the world, and they can run our accounts department. We'll get the best IT, they can run our IT department. But we just want to do what we do, our core business. And they went on to tremendous success and were sold for 2.5 or 3 billion after about 4 years in business. And when you actually looked at the trust they gave to all of these experts, and they focused on what they were experts in, and I learned a huge lesson in that. And I take that to a lot of our customers, and I say, look, like I would take an example. I could often walk in, and still do, to an organization that might have, say, 500 employees, but they might have 30 people in their IT department. Now, to put that in perspective, that would make them, their IT department, in the top 50 IT outsourced companies in Ireland in terms of people count, right? So you have probably 1,000 companies in Ireland with bigger IT departments than most IT companies, right? So ultimately, they now need to be an expert in that space, but they're not, because all they're looking at is one network. And as time goes on, their knowledge of the network narrows and gets smaller and smaller. And when you take that across every aspect, not just IT in an organization, outsourcing starts making a lot of sense when actually you can get the value of external knowledge and bring in what other people have done well in their business into yours. It just makes sense.
It's so interesting as well, because we don't work in the same fields, but when I'm going in and I'm trying to sell a new CRM package to a company, and they've been, so customer relationship management, for those people who are listening, like Salesforce, Zoho, I mean, there's a million of them out there. HubSpot, there's a million out there. And sometimes when they've built their own stuff in-house, they might have built it 10 years ago when the company was a different type of company, different scale. And I find that as well, that kind of silo where they haven't modernized their approach at all. And then it's a big job to change it. It's like a big rip out and replace. So there's some overlap there. So when you guys are working with your customers, are you kind of bringing them new ideas about how things should be done on a continual basis? Is that something that one of the benefits would be? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. Take IT security, a huge challenge in the industry today. And, we first had a ransomware breach in 2013. And there are companies that this year that are still getting a breach for the very first time. And, within our client base, by probably 2017, we had them all locked down and secured. And our customers are at very low risk category since then. But on a consistent basis, we're getting new business where somebody's a ransomware attack and they've been brought down. So, the value is, once one of our customers has an incident event, or they have something that's really transformational in terms of IT, we bring that knowledge across all of the customers and bring it back to them. And even take something, right, that's, we would consider ourselves kind of a very widespread of customers in our client base. And you mentioned HubSpot there, right? And we put HubSpot in our business about 3 years ago on the recommendation of one of our customers. And now I would say we probably have 15 or 20 customers that have put it in. We're not a HubSpot agent. We don't deal with them in any way, shape, or form, other than that we really like the product and we'll pass that little nugget of information on. And again, like you're talking about writing bespoke software, and lots of people do this, and they'll get an application and they'll go, there's an on-premise or a cloud version. Let's get the on-premise version because I can customize it. And I'm always going, okay, you need to rule out the cloud version first as something that isn't going to work. And if it'll do 80% of what you're going to do, the long-term benefit of having it in the cloud means that, you're not going to be stuck with your external partner who is the only one who knows how yours is customized. You're not going to be stuck with upgrades because the customization you've done can't be upgraded. And you end up stuck with an on-premise solution for 10 years longer than you had intended. And everyone else has got all the benefits of a cloud solution. So for us, the value in actually understanding, I suppose, across such a wide variety of businesses, what the right thing to do is. And we'll always say where you can put it on a pure SaaS application, put it on SaaS, put it on the cloud, and not be bringing something in on-premise. Keep your on-premise infrastructure as small and neat as possible. And it just makes such a difference. So we can bring that knowledge, and every time we come across something, we bring that to our customer base. We should have done this a long time ago. We've a rule in place now for our clients that by the 31st of or 30th of June, they have to have two-factor authentication for all Office 365 accounts, or we will no longer allow them to be a customer. And we probably should have done that a year earlier, because a lot of people don't understand the importance of that simple thing. And two-factor authentication is free, right? Yeah. Everyone should have it. It's not even a debatable point. And sometimes people say to me, because they haven't experienced the breach, but my password is very complicated. No one would ever guess it. And I'll say, they don't have to guess it. They're going to trick you to give it to them, and then they'll log in and take your data. And that's what they do. It's not about guessing passwords. And and there's all sorts of different concepts in IT security about the password length and complexity. And the reality is, for me, that doesn't make sense either, because if someone's going to rob your password, they can rob a complex one as easy as rob a small one. That's an irrelevant piece. And the most easy way to take a password is to rob it. So you might as well have a password you can remember. But if you have two-factor authentication, they need your password, easy or hard, and your phone to get into your email. Or into your systems. And that's, just practical, simple things.
And those things like that, if you're a business and that's not what your focus is, you're kind of like, you don't really need that. And then there's a breach, and then I guess they're calling you guys. So when you guys started the business, I'm always wondering about the first few months of the business like that. When you guys mentioned that you were a different type of business, then how are you getting your first customers? Is it kind of network effects, or are you kind of taking out ads? I know that you've got your big lease and everything, like we said, and the big salaries from day one. But how do you actually get customers at the beginning?
At the start, well, with grave difficulty, I'll be honest. And again, you're starting a business and you're looking at what you've done, and you've written out all of the reasons why someone should buy what you've built, and you're like, okay, well, we're going to do virtualization and cloud email. They were our two things, right? And I'm going, okay, with virtualization, you buy 10 servers, it's 100,000. With virtualization, you can buy one server for 20 grand, and then you can get a second one for 20 grand. So you spend 40 rather than 100, and you can actually have full disaster recovery. And it takes up less space and uses less electricity, and you have a ton of money left over. And I'm going, everyone's going to buy this. And then I walk in, and people, Celtic Tiger days, people are going, yeah, but it's only saving me 60,000. Like, that's not a lot over 5 years. And again, like, there was so much money in the economy, it actually went against us. And, I was going in saying, cloud email in 2008, and we were charging at the time, I'm going to take a stab, but about €12 per user per mailbox, right? And I'm going into places, and it's, let's say you're saying it's €300 a month for email, or you can buy a server for 20 grand to do the same thing, right? So over 5 years, if you work the maths, it's cheaper to be on cloud. But also, if you buy the server, you have to put 100 quid a month of electricity into it, and you have to recharge your 150 quid a month to support it, right? And I'm going into companies, and they're going, yeah, no, like, it's only a couple of 100 quid a month. It's not really relevant. And by the way, because it's cheaper, it's not perceived to be better, right? So it was a huge challenge for us. We couldn't actually get people to sign off. And then when the recession really took hold in 2009, we were going in, and we were going, and they're saying, we can't afford to buy a server for 20 grand. We're going, well, we have a cloud solution for 300. And finally, so it was actually a recession-started product. And now, and even then, we were always selling it based on the commercial saving, but it was much harder to sell it on the benefit of cloud, which now you could go in, you could actually argue if on-premise was cheaper, than cloud, you would still want to go cloud because actually it just makes more sense from a business point of view. But yeah, the first couple of customers were hard, and we did it. One of our first customers was Prontoprint, right? And they bought a firewall with us. And God, they must have been, we were delighted, right? But we did a press release around Nostra secure Prontoprint. And I think we sold it like a €1,500 firewall. And we got newspaper articles. We got a huge amount of press over this thing. And we went out and actually spent more than the entire profit on a night out between the three of us after getting our first check in the door. But business was hard fought back then. And, and the other thing was in Celtic Tiger and that era was there was huge loyalty to other companies. So your suppliers, and you were coming in as a new player. So what the recession actually did for us now, it was a very hard first 3 years because it wasn't until 2010 that everyone was I suppose drained and needed to look at a new way of doing things, that we were able to come in as a new alternative way of doing something. But in that same period, we had evolved from just being a provider of product and cloud services, actually saying, look, we'll take the whole thing and we'll manage all of your IT. We'll provide you with the people. We'll provide you with the services. We'll provide you with the servers, PCs and desktops. You get one check a month. And if you have any concerns or issues, you can give us a ring and we'll land in and we'll talk you through it, be it security or otherwise. And, we got really lucky. And what we then learned, I remember going to a SaaS provider at the time, and I can't remember which one, but they were talking about how to grow a business, and they were showing us their model. And I remember the time they had a 20% per annum customer loss and a 40% per annum customer increase, and they were netting it out that 20% per annum growth on recurring revenue, and they were showing the model. And I remember I was looking at it and going, if they would double the speed of growth if they reduced their customer loss. And we then focused on customer retention, which we track on a monthly basis. So our customer retention is at 98% of customers, but actually it's at 99% of revenue. So we in that the customers that we have lost in the last couple of years are at the micro side of businesses. And for us, having that retention allowed us to grow, and every piece of growth that we had became an annual growth rather than actually fighting to grow when you're actually just marrying two numbers off each other. And that was probably the biggest turning point for us.
It's that recurring revenue that is it's such a game changer when it's compounding like that. When I started in HubSpot, I think we were at, I don't know, like 200 million or something per annum. And now that's over $1 billion in 4 years, because that's all compounded. Say, our churn is a little bit higher than, or a little bit lower rather than 99%, but it's still one of the higher ones in the industry, which keeps it really strong as well. So yeah. I love that idea of the building something that's recurring. And just to give people an idea of the scale of the business right now, you're talking about you and maybe your founder partners going out on a night out and spending that money. But now it's over 100 people in the organization. That's what it looks like. LinkedIn.
Yeah, there's about 160 in Nostra today. And growing, and about 45 of those would be based permanently on our customer sites. But we're not a recruiter, we're not an agency. Our teams that are in customer sites are quite fluid. So we might, provide a resource to a business, and let's say they have 2 IT people from Nostra. But over the course of a year, there could be 12 different people filling those 2 slots. And again, come back to, I know this is specifically about outsourcing, but in outsourcing, the point I would say is that it probably takes 16 or 18 different skill sets for us to deliver back a proper solution to a customer. And, we had a customer today who rang us and said, we're hiring about 35 or 40 new people. They're going to be based all over Europe. They're going to be working from home. They're going to be using their own devices. And they're going to be working on highly sensitive data, which is extremely sensitive in terms of the global market perspective. And we can't have a scenario that they take this data and pass it on to a third party. That can't be possible. Can you build a solution that will make that happen? And, we have a team of experts that were in the security team. We brought them in, we went through the problem, we came up with a solution, and we did it, right? But that was the on-site team that we have for that organization didn't have that skill set. And that's the whole point of outsourcing, that you're able to plug into our much wider set of skills, whatever the event that happens, that you can bring one phone number, get through to your account manager, tell them your problem, and they'll get the right resource on a call with you to deal with whatever's there.
Interesting as well, because imagine if you had to, like, even from a traditional IT consulting point of view, where it's project based, I guess, a lot of the time, where you have to start from scratch, go to put out your tender, you get all these tender offers coming in, but to have that ability to pick up the phone and say, I need to expand my IT infrastructure for next month, and you guys will be able to kind of work out a plan for that. Yeah. And the fact that you guys are 160 people and you're 3 people 14 years ago, that's really impressive. And I think it makes a huge impact on those people's lives as well. So when we talk to entrepreneurs, it must feel good to say, we're over 100 people, net new jobs. Is that something that you pride yourself on?
Oh no, absolutely. Look, and to be fair, we've it's not far off. Our client retention, our staff retention is up at that level as well. And because we're a growing company, it creates lots of opportunity for people. And we've a very relaxed cultural atmosphere. We won't tolerate a customer being abusive to our team. We won't tolerate our team being abusive to a customer. We're an office that there's never any shouting in. I want to work in Nostra. I really, our play is a long-term play. Like, this is I'm 5 years now into a 30-year plan. So 5 years ago, myself and my brother Barry sat down and we said, right, what can we do? We were mid-30s at the time. Let's do a 30-year plan to 65, and how big can we grow this? And we were only 4 million at that time. We're probably 22, 23 million this year. So, we've done 5x in 5 years. So our hope is we can continue on something like that level. But, for me, all the way through, when you're trying to grow a business, you have to make sure that you consistently have a team that enjoy it. And for me, it's all about that. Like, I was in the office today, and today actually we had a full house in terms of the office and what we can allow in COVID times. So pre-COVID, we would have had maybe 75 or 80 people in our head office in Lucan. Today there was about 23 or 4 people in it, which is the most we can allow at the moment. But that was the highest number that had been in the office probably since the start of the pandemic, and lots of different reasons for that. But the atmosphere in there, even with social distancing and with everyone sitting in our canteen, we've got tables, 1 person per table at lunch. And it was just amazing just to be back in the group and everyone back together. It was like the band back together again. But yeah, no, it does feel good. And I have people who started with me at 20 years of age, who are 32, 33 now, after buying a house, had a baby, all of those different things that you go through that journey with people. And for me, I would hope that they can have their full career span working in what we're trying to build out here.
So, okay, Mark Baker, are you thinking 30 years ahead, or what's the plan there? Are you guys getting together?
I'm afraid to think 30 years ahead. 5 years is the max that I think. But what I wanted to ask, Kevin, is you went through a recession, obviously the first, the last one that we remember.
Yeah.
When COVID came along, what was your thoughts? How did you think it was going to affect the business? And then how did it actually affect the business?
Well, yeah. So look, and I will say I was a novice in business when it happened. I mean, for us, the 28th of March 2008 was the day that the music stopped. And it stopped in our business because Bank of Ireland and Bank of Scotland, Ireland, both stopped doing technology leasing blanket in the Irish marketplace. And that was a huge driver for new business sales for us. Effectively, 100% of our deals at that point were all financed with leasing. So the music stopped, and the customer leads didn't go away. We were still talking to people who wanted to do things, but then you had Northern Rock collapsed. You'd all the big business collapses. You'd publicity every single day of negative news. And every day, you'd almost be at a point of you're getting a deal with somebody and you're sitting in the reception hoping to sign it, and you're watching the news or something pops up on your phone 1,000 jobs lost in Galway, and you go in and they say, look, we're just going to wait another month and see what happens here. And we were in that holding phase, and I didn't cut salaries.
We're all kind of gone. The leasing was
Oh, yeah.
gone. You were still
Yeah.
talking to customers, but they're all kind of on the fence saying, let's see what happens next month.
Yeah, and the challenge that I had is there was so much bad news. There was so much coming through on a regular basis. Customers were delaying decisions. And I, like every year, I think no one really understood in 2008 the extent of what was coming at us. And you're holding on and holding on. But we went from making about 30 grand a month profit at that point, even though it was in your second year, to losing 50 grand a month. And that happened overnight, as in we made 30 grand in March, we lost 50 in April, May, June, July, August, all the way through, because our revenue went from 300,000 a month to 30,000 a month. So it was a massively painful period. And I waited too long, right? So when I actually, made all the changes, let some people go, cut salaries, went and renegotiated rent, all of those different things, we were so deep in the hole, it took me years to crawl back out of it. So when the pandemic hit, we went very early, right? We didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know how our customers were going to be affected. We called in all the team early. We arranged weekly meetings. We sent people home early, as in we sent people home to work from probably a week before Paddy's Day, so just slightly ahead of the curve. And we announced a pay cut of 20% right across the board. We had customers contacting us on a daily basis going, we don't know what's going to happen here, but we're putting you on notice that we may need a reduction in services. And what we did is we proactively reached out to every single customer. We said, if you're in trouble, contact us. We will support you. Forget about our contractual arrangements. If we need to give you discounts, if we need to stop billing, we will do whatever it takes as long as you're genuinely in a bind. And we did that all the way through. And then what happened was about a week. So we then, in our business, we had a week where everything was negative. And I'm going to say the week after Paddy's week, everything was negative. Every day, customers were looking for discounts. Customers were saying they're not going to pay us on time. Government then came out with their supports. Companies were saying, actually, it's not going to be as bad as we think. We're going to be able to do this. Then we started having orders coming in for new laptops and new desktops, and it literally took off. So within a 4-week period, without ever even implementing a pay cut, we restored the pay, so we never cut anyone's salaries. And we ended up, I suppose the swings and roundabouts came. So we had probably 20 customers significantly impacted. Some of our bigger customers were impacted, and we stopped billing. Some we did half billing, some we did 20%, depending on how severely they were impacted. But all the companies who stopped trading, we stopped billing. And then, but on the swing of that, we had a ton of customers that just took off, and they went and they needed more services. And we were able to redeploy people that we were taking out of sites that were closed, so retail customers, and put them into sites that were accelerating. And actually, thankfully, our revenue stayed flat on budget for the year as a result. But we just managed it very well. We managed the communication with the team. We went to all of our suppliers early to say, if there's an issue, we need to deal with this. But thankfully we got through last year. Like, we literally came in within 250,000 of our budget last year. So in a business of our size, was a couple of percent off. And that was very much to do with, in my view, deciding that we wanted to build long-term relationships with our customers. We weren't going to hold people to contracts. We wanted to be fair, and we wanted everyone to be fair to us, and we got that. And I think our move early was something that we learned from the last recession, and make sure that you're ahead of the curveball and over communicate.
It was such an interesting time. I remember that March as well. Like, it's hard to put into context now. And I think it's going to be even harder to contextualize this to our kids when they're growing up, when that week when COVID was, when the Taoiseach came out and said everyone has to stay home and all that type of stuff. So I remember, like, we had ordered new cupboards for like under the stairs and stuff, and I was like to my wife, call them, cancel that. I might not be able to go to work tomorrow. Do you know? Like, I thought we absolutely didn't know what was going to happen. But then we saw that the people working from home, and for you guys and for my business as well, anything that was kind of digital, it just went through the roof. And people had to pivot that weren't going to pivot until they were forced to. And I think it made a kind of a breakthrough. And I know Mark's in recruiting, but I've got some other people in that I know in kind of tech recruiting, and it's one of the things that people are looking for, that flexibility as standard now, rather than, I remember a few years ago, a remote working job was pretty much a rarity, like even in the tech industry. But does that affect your business? As in, does working from home affect your business kind of positively if people need more distributed IT solutions, or is it does the office environment suit your business? How does that affect you guys long term?
Well, I'll say two things, and again, different businesses are affected in different ways. Like my wife has a business, Flowers Made Easy, and she only bought that business at the start of the pandemic, 1st of January last year. And they closed up shop. They did everything as from the Taoiseach's announcement, which was just before Mother's Day. Huge time in that business. But you look at what she does. They can't work remotely, right? They are manufacturing and delivering product, right? So there's not a lot that those types of organizations can do. But from normal company or most companies, certainly a portion of the team can work from home, and in our business, all of our team can work from home. Like, to be fair, our business is perfectly aligned to have multiple offices or multiple locations, or everyone working from home. I started out by saying we started as a cloud provider. So in reality, our customers had more cloud services than most, and therefore the ease at which they moved home was unheard of across Ireland, right? And our biggest source of new business last year was where you had a couple at home, and let's say the husband's business was with Nostra, and literally arrives home and everything works, and the wife's business might have been with somebody else with all on-premise infrastructure. It was clunky, just didn't function properly. And they're going, how come you're able to work really well? I'm not. We won a ton of business like that. It was brilliant. It was one of the best ways to win it, because you get a phone call on a Monday, you get a customer signed by a Friday, in what historically would have been a year-long engagement. But yeah, for me, like what I would say for me personally, I would have had a certain number of remote workers. And the way I always described it to people pre-pandemic was, there are people who can work from home, and there are people who can't. And the ones who can are brilliant at it, and the ones who can't ultimately, go home and don't actually get a level of productivity. But I mean, I would say by and large, I'm sure you've the same experience. I mean, everyone can really work from home. And I think it comes down to if you want it or not. And I think giving people the choice is something that I will do for every employee now, whereas historically I would have been very cautious of allowing anyone to work permanently from home. And we've in theory now 160 remote workers in the business. Everyone at a portion of the week works from home, and a lot of people, there's over probably 50 people who haven't been in any of our offices in over a year. And their productivity is exactly where everyone else is. Some of them are way up. So for me, it's going to change a lot of things. I think 9 to 5:30 is gone. I don't think it'll ever come back. I don't think it should come back. And I think, what will happen is we'll have a working time in a day. So it's 7 till 7, Monday to Friday. And you need to do 37.5 hours in that week. And, different departments we're talking about today. I mean, I think a sales department, as an example, needs to be open 5 days, and you'll typically deal with one person if you've an account management scenario. So therefore, they'll have to do 7.5 hours a day, but it might be 7 till 3, and next day it might be 10 till 7 or whatever. And I think that flexibility will be there. And then I think in roles where you're doing shared work, like in engineering or in other sectors, even in retail, I think you'll end up with more the 4-day week and the 3-day week, where you're still doing the same amount of hours, but you're doing it over a shorter time frame. And for me, I think it might end up with retail being open in longer, standard retail hours, standard business hours, and just a completely different way in which we all actually work. And I think it'll be great. And for me, I've never been one to work from home. I never had an office in the house, never brought a laptop in the door. I left the laptop in the car, so work had to stay there. But, I've had a year of picking up the kids in school a couple of times a week, been here when they come home, getting disturbed during Zoom calls, You know, and all that, and I think it's been phenomenal. So I expect I'm going to work at least 1 day a week on a permanent basis from home, and I think that's a really good thing, you know. And I'm really enjoying it now. For me, I love the office, definitely, and I will have the majority of my time there. But am I going to make sure I'm there for 9 o'clock every morning? And even as the business owner, I used to feel guilty coming in at 9:05, even though I might have been at a meeting at 7 o'clock in town. It's like I can't. I'll go for a coffee if I come in at 9:30. Then they'll know I was doing something rather than 7 minutes past and going, it's tardy late, you know. And all that is gone. I mean, I see somebody walking in at 20 past 9 now, and I'm like, did you drop your kids at school? Great, you know, as opposed to 20 past 9, you're 20 minutes late. And I just think it's great that culture is gone, and hopefully stays gone.
Yeah, because I haven't worked in a place like that in a long time. Like even in HubSpot, they're pretty flexible anyway. Like you'd be, and because I've always, well, not always, but for the last number of years, I've been in the sales end of things. So it's a very simple thing where it's like you're either hitting your numbers or you're not. And as long as you're hitting your numbers, people don't really, like there's a lot of flexibility that can be given to people like that. But I suppose there's going to be those some of my friends that are in the business where if they're like account managers, they've got to be on call from this amount of hours because they need coverage, right? That's completely different. So there's going to be a kind of a set of rules for everyone in the type of function, which is really interesting. But you mentioned the 30-year plan. It's kind of like the Chinese Communist Party. I like the vision, the long-term effect. That's why I always think when I'm watching the news and when I see China, I'm like, these guys are going to win. They're thinking long-term, you know? So I think we need to do a little bit more long-term thinking. But from a growth point of view, as most of your business in Ireland, to grow the way you guys want to grow, is this going to be something that you guys are going like overseas, international, multiple countries? Can you run international business from Lucan? What's the plans?
Yeah, well, we're going to be on the move soon. We haven't announced our new location yet, but we've outgrown our office in Lucan, and unfortunately, we haven't been able to find a suitable building to replace it with locally. So we'll be moving within the vicinity, within a couple of kilometres, but we are moving out of Lucan. You know, I suppose Dublin is an amazing city, right? And you go anywhere in the world, and the acceptance that you get from being a Dublin headquartered business is like nowhere else in the world, in my opinion. But you know, you look at all of the global businesses that are headquartered here, you know, and I believe that we can build our business from here without going too far off the shores of Ireland. Like one of our most common new customers that come in, because a lot of our business is international, but actually our core focus is Irish headquartered global companies. And I'm not talking about the Microsofts and the Facebooks of this world. Right? I'm talking about, you know, companies with a couple of hundred employees and 7 or 8 offices around the world, and we can, as an Irish provider, manage all of those locations from here with our global partners. And we have people on the ground in other countries, and we're not afraid to hire somebody in the UK or Singapore or China, wherever we need to hire somebody on the ground to manage IT if required. But that's our core focus. And my view is that Ireland is probably one of the best places in the world for somebody with our vision to do that. You know, we've lots of pharma companies that we look after. We've lots of IT companies, we've manufacturing companies that are all global, and we manage them all from here. And I think our growth, as I look at it, is all achievable in that space. And you know, talking about a 30-year plan, you know, and this is somewhat of a cliched statement, right? But you know, a lot of people say that you overestimate what you can achieve in the short term, but you underestimate what you can achieve in the long term. And that's probably what we're doing. I mean, if you look at take an Excel spreadsheet and do 20% compound growth year on year, right? Starting at 13 million, right? Just as an example. After 20% growth, you're at $1 billion, right? But the second year is only, you know, 15 million, and then it's 18 million, right? So, you know, but 20%, if you consistently deliver, it jumps up that high. Looking, you know, I don't know if we'll ever achieve anything greater than where we are today, but we're on a journey and we're enjoying it. And, you know, and I've seen lots of people over the years sell their companies, and and do very well, and then get lost a little bit about, what's next and what am I going to do next, and you almost, well, you meet somebody and you might somebody say, well, actually 5 years ago they sold a company for 10 million, and you will have heard of it, you remember it, but actually they tend to be, not everyone, and obviously probably lots of people go on to do second or third amazing businesses. In fact, somebody I massively admire, Norman Crowley, who was on last week or a couple of weeks ago with you guys.
Yeah.
I mean, his success after success is so exciting, but actually his business is probably multiple businesses, if that makes sense. That's his thing. So for me, I think I've got a great business with great people, and if I sold it, one, I don't know if the people would want to be friends with me anymore, and I love them all. So I'm going, okay, well, here's a great bunch of people that I believe can go on a really long journey with me, and see how big we can do it, and let's just throw our hat in the ring and go for it. And we are very much taking the, small growth, but year on year, and be consistent with it, and keep going, keep retaining the customers. If we need to stop because we're something goes wrong in terms of our retention of clients, we'll stop, fix it, and then we'll go again and see what we do. And again, we're not afraid to get out of our industry, because for me, the people that we're in, that are in the business are really dynamic and have lots of different interests. So I would think we will diversify, but stay in Ireland, but focus very much on global companies. But every service that is known to man, we would like to be able to provide to companies in a B2B basis. And I think that's where our expertise is.
So interesting, because a lot of people, the game is to, a lot of people think the game is to kind of build it as quickly as you can, kind of almost build to sell. That's the kind of the focus on a lot of kind of information technology businesses, especially SaaS. That seems to be the thing. Although, like we've mentioned HubSpot a good few times today, the guys who started that, I think it was 15 years ago, they're still kind of in the leadership positions, and they got lots of offers to get out, I'm sure, and it's really paid off now. And since COVID, it's gone up 300% or something, the stock, which is great for everybody involved. But okay, so this may not work, Mark. I was thinking about this new segment we might do on the podcast. So if this doesn't work, we'll cut it out, right? So we used to do a quick fire questions, and we might do that as well. But we were thinking about, so what would you do for industry specific to what you're doing now? So you guys are thinking 30 years. Say if somebody was starting a business in IT outsourcing or something that's adjacent to that, and you had a gun to your head, you had 3 years to start a business in a area of area of what you guys do, or an area where you think there's a lot of growth potential in, and you had to sell the company in 3 years. What would be the gameplay there? What would be the kind of in and out game for IT reselling? Would it be start is it a reseller business? Is it a security consulting business? What's the 3-year plan that could work for somebody?
Well, security is the hot topic at the moment, right? And probably the one I would say, again, it's not easy to get into the space that we're in, because it requires so many resources to do. I mean, in reality, if you come to me and I have less than 15 people, it's unlikely you're going to be able to deliver all of the services you need, even if you've one computer, because in reality, it takes a lot of different skill sets to manage it. So the cost of entry is high. But in IT security, as a specific niche, the big challenge in the industry is there's a lack of security experts. So if you're a security expert, or you can get one, then there's a huge market for it. You can grow quickly, but ultimately your product is the person. So you got to get the person. And then in reality, if you're a good salesperson, you'll be able to sell their time. So I would probably say I'd stick with the security piece. But it is a sector with very, very few new entrants on a yearly basis. And it's a sector that is full of really two tiers. You have companies that are up to 2 million in turnover, and there's hundreds of them, and you have companies that's above 2 million in turnover. And in our space, there's probably 2 new entrants in that second category in the last 5 years.
Wow.
And there is probably only 20 companies in that space in total. And at this point, there's probably only 4 or 5 that are Irish owned, or owned by private people. So it's a very narrow market and sector, and probably a high barrier of entry to get into it because of the skill sets it requires.
And there's such a, not a lack of them, but it's competitive out there for those type of people, like you're saying, with the security expertise and stuff like that. Interesting. So what you're saying is there's no in and out here. You got to be in for the long haul and hope you got the resources to break into the top 5.
Yeah, and again, look, what I would say is that in our space, the technology-led IT companies tend to be much more successful than non-technology-led IT companies. But again, the technology-led IT companies often don't grow because the sales skills aren't there. So what I would say is, if I was starting it and I didn't have the sales skills, I'd be saying you need a really good techie and you need a really good salesperson, and they need to be like it love in how they work together. And if they can get that, that's a very good starting point to get into our space.
We've heard that a few times now. I was just going to say to you, because you were unique enough that I know you had co-founders, but you had the technical knowledge and the sales skills. How important, and if you could give a weighting towards either one, how important were they to you in starting out as an entrepreneur?
So, I think in our case, I think they were probably at different points, they had different levels of importance. At the start, I didn't have, I was a good salesman, but I was selling in the Celtic Tiger era, right? And I watched a video once and somebody was talking about Celtic Tiger sales, and it was a Giselle running through, I don't know if you ever saw the video, there was 2 lions sitting in a desert, right, in front of a tree. And there's a Giselle running, right? And the Giselle runs, so it cuts to the 2 lions and they're yawning and the Giselle is running. And all of a sudden the Giselle hits the tree, kills himself and falls down dead in front of the 2 lions, right? And the title was Selling in the Celtic Tiger Days, right? You didn't have to hunt. You just had to have a phone that worked, that had a charged battery, and business came to you. And actually, when the music stopped and you had to learn to sell, an entirely different experience. So, I had to get up and really relearn how to go and hunt and be a hunter. And I think anyone who moved into sales from 2001 onwards didn't have that hunting skill. So, the sales was critically important at the start. But for me to have both, the value really that the delivered was, I didn't have to refer back to somebody else when I'm in with a customer. I could talk to them about the solution, explain to them why you should buy it, and get the deal over the line. And Nostra actually trains all of its salespeople on technical. So our view is the sales skill is harder to teach. You have to kind of have a natural, almost extreme customer service ability. And I think if you have that, you can train the technical at a high level. But it's very hard to take somebody who's very technical and train them to sell. So I would say if somebody was looking at the core skill that's required to be any entrepreneur, core skill in my view is selling. But a lack of understanding of the product, if you don't have it, you need to give that to somebody that you implicitly trust in the market, and they have to help you make the strategic decisions of where you're going to go. And what we found over the years, a lot of the companies in our space that haven't done well, Microsoft will release a new product, or somebody will release a new product which has a specific niche, I suppose fit in the market, right? And it might be for 5% of companies, this product, right? And some IT companies will latch onto it and try and sell it to every single one of their customers, and it doesn't work for everyone because it's a specific application. And having that technical understanding is key in any business. I mean, like not just in IT. If you're in recruitment, right? What's the key? If you're talking about financial controllers and supplying to companies, you need to technically understand what their job is to be able to sell it properly. So for me, you have to have the sales skills and you have to have a good technical understanding of it. And and for me, it's a bit like you're going through an airport, and I'm buying, just because I'm interested, I'm buying like business magazines, right? And Forbes and Business Plus and whatever magazines are on the shelf. But I'm also buying, PC World and Compute, whatever, and Mac World, and I'm reading them and go, oh, that's the new product. So I'm interested. So So you're getting both sides. But that's a unique thing to me, you know, and I'm a bit odd like that. So there's not many of me in the world, thank God.
I think it's very interesting because that's what we were talking about. We did an episode on Naval Ravikant, the investor in Silicon Valley. I don't know if you've come across him before, but he was saying people who can build and sell are kind of like, you know, it's a magic kind of recipe. So hopefully, it's been working so far. So let's keep that going. But at this stage, we usually ask you the kind of the final question of the night, which is, would you prefer a T-shirt or a mug? But because of Brexit, we've been cut off with our T-shirts. Are we still cut off, Mark?
They're making it difficult.
Okay. All right. So there is a mug, a SharkPod mug on the way to you, Kevin. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really, really enjoyed chatting to you. Congratulations on all the success of the business. Anytime an entrepreneur generates 100 jobs and up to 20 million, over 20 million a year in revenue, that's already a huge success, a big impact on people's lives, like you said. And also taking that long-term vision is something that a lot of our listeners might take a little bit of inspiration from as well. So thank you so much for joining us on the SharkPod this evening.
Great.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, my ambition for the next week is to get a haircut.
Okay, let's all put that in our calendars, try to get that done. Right.
Well,
Right.
not everyone.
Sorry, Mark. All right, perfect. So